Welcome back. All right, so I want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers. I thought about doing a video on the Sharks, and I thought, I did a video on the Sharks before the season started. Honestly, as bad as this start's been, enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk about a team off to a good start. The thing is, there's some doom and gloom around the start, too, isn't there? If you're a Flyers fan, you're probably thinking, well, I've seen this story before. True. So they're 4-2-1 to start the season. Not bad. Last year they were 5-2 to start the season. The previous year they were 4-2-1. The previous year 4-2-1. And 2019-2020, the last time they made the playoffs, they actually had a mediocre start of 3-3-1. So, how did they end up being so mediocre? Well, 2020-2021, they actually started 11-4-3. So it was a really good start to the season, and they went 8-13-3 after that. They finished the season 25-23-8. So 2 games above NHL 500, but not a playoff team. 2021-2022, they went 7-3-2 to start the season. So again, good start. And then they went 1-9-2 after that. They had 2 10-plus game winless skids during that season. And they finished the year 25-46-11. I would think that the darkest that it's been for the Flyers in terms of a regular season in a very long time. Last year, they went 5-2 to start the season, and then they went 2-8-3 over their next 13 games. They also had a 10-game winless skid last year as well. I like to say winless skid because when you say losing streak, there's overtime and shootout losses in there. I'll say winless. But yeah, 10 games there, and then they finished the season 31-38-13. Now, after last season, they knew they had to make some changes, and they did. So Hayes has gone to St. Louis. DeAngelo, he ends up going to Carolina. Provorov, he ends up in Columbus. Lemieux is in Carolina. And Willman is in New Jersey. So they're all gone. And of the 5, Provorov and DeAngelo being gone shows they were revamping the blue line. And Provorov had good and bad over the last couple of seasons. At least by getting him traded to Columbus, we won't have to hear the Niskanen talk anymore. He had a really good year with Matt Niskanen, and then Niskanen retired. And ever since then, the comments around Philly, and I admit I was part of that too, was, man, he really misses Niskanen. Of course, DeAngelo, it was just a disaster in Philadelphia for Tony D. And so him going back to Carolina, not really a surprise. The surprise this summer was it took as long as it did. So their upcoming schedule is a good way to look at whether or not they can keep this up. Now, the ability of Philadelphia to come up short against opponents that are beneath them in the standings, it ended up being part of what sank them in the previous seasons as well. So I'm not saying this is going to be easy. And tomorrow they have to bring their A game against Anaheim. The Anaheim Ducks are now 3-4. And again, if you don't bring your A game against the Ducks, they have the ability to beat you. There are some good weapons there. As long as Leo Carlsson's in the lineup and everything works out well, I do think that the Flyers could have a handful with the Ducks there. Then on Monday, they're at home against Carolina. We know Carolina has not had the greatest of starts, but they're off of that nightmare West Coast swing, and I do expect their record to get better. Of course, for Carolina, they're against the Sharks tonight. I'm not doing the Sharks video. And then Wednesday, the Flyers are at home against Buffalo. Friday, they go to Buffalo. So in the next 4 games, they have the home and home with Buffalo, Carolina, Anaheim. Well, Buffalo's off to a slow start. If Philadelphia can get on them early and make them doubt themselves, well, Philadelphia could sweep a half and half or back-to-back there, or home and home. But it is not how do I put this? There's no easy schedule in the National Hockey League anymore, but it is a winnable schedule. I'll put it that way. And then what happens after that? Saturday, they're at home against LA. So at home, on the road, at home, and then they go on the road. They go to the West Coast. On the 7th of November, they're in San Jose. They're in Anaheim on the 10th. They're in LA on the 11th. And then they're in Carolina to round out the road trip on the 15th. So they have 2 games against LA. So they have their whole season series against LA wrapped up by November the 11th. And, of course, LA has had their ups and downs. I think of the teams on this board, the only one that, I look at and I say Philadelphia's going to have a hard time there is Carolina. They have the 2 games against Carolina. But outside of that, over their next 9 games, I think it's a winnable schedule. And again, Philadelphia over the years, they have had trouble with those winnable schedule games. I think it was last year they got off to the good start. They beat Tampa, they beat Florida, and then it just all fell apart. Now this year, Konechny, 7 games, 6 goals, 3 assists, 9 points. Konechny only played 60 games last year. The 22 games he missed, they definitely missed him. Sanheim's got off to an amazing start. 7 games, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. I remember his start to last season was nowhere near as effective as he's been this year. Atkinson in 7 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points there. Having Atkinson back in the lineup has been huge. He missed all of last season. So did Couturier, who in 7 games has 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And he brings this two-way energy to a game that is really difficult to match when you look at players around the league. Couturier is really, really strong in that area. You've got Farabee, 7 games, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points for him. Bobby Brink, 6 games, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points. Of course, Brink's a rookie, and those are his first 2 goals in his NHL career. I'm still of the mind that the Boston Bruins' Bobby Brink would have made more sense, but the Philadelphia Flyers' Bobby Brink still has some alliteration, so I'll let it slide. Tippett, 7 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. From a goal-scoring perspective, Tippett off to a little bit of a slower start. And Lawton has yet to record a goal, but he has 4 assists in 7 games. So the overall play has been good, and Carter Hart has been very good as well. 4-2 with a .923 save percentage. Erson's only played 1 game. He had the loss in extra time and an .800 save percentage in that appearance. So Carter Hart's been very good, playing 6 out of 7 games. That's not sustainable. They're going to need to play their backup a little bit more, but it's Tortorella. So Tortorella, your guess is as good as mine as to how often he's going to deploy Hart. Will he push him to 60, 65 games? He could. Now, their power play clicking at 13% means it's not clicking very well at all. Their penalty kill is clicking very well at 86.4%. So those two numbers put together, almost 100. If they can get their power play going, they can become elite in terms of special teams pretty darn quickly. Their goal differential is at a +6. Goal differential isn't something that you would think that would make a big difference. So this team has 10 more goals scored than goals allowed. Why does that make them better than this team that's allowed 3 more goals than they've scored? They have the same record. But usually at the end of the regular season, the team that's got the better goal differential will usually be the one that ends up across the finish line as a playoff team. So if they can maintain and expand that goal differential, again, it seems like an odd stat, but it seems to work. Shots, they're getting 33.6 shots per game. They're allowing 27.9. If they can keep those numbers up, that means a lot as well. One interesting thing with Florida's start, and one thing to keep an eye on, is Morgan Frost. The question about when he's going to get in the lineup. And basically Tortorella saying all the right things about he'd like to get him in the lineup, but he hasn't really had a chance. They're playing well. Well, he's only played 2 games this season, didn't record a point in either of those games. And Frost is a player that there's been reports Tortorella's not all that enamored with for a while. So there's the possibility that Morgan Frost, if he's not on the market, may end up on the market. And Frost is still young enough that I would think he'd attract some attention if he was available on the trade block. But for the Philadelphia Flyers, they're not in a position right now where they need to worry about any kind of a trade. And they do have a schedule coming up where I could see them winning 3 of their next 4. I could see them winning 6 of these 9 games I have on the board here, maybe 7. Absolutely. Those are winnable. Winnable's as close as I can get. There are no gimmies, as I said. But for Philadelphia, I do have some hope that this time around, maybe this is a little bit more sustainable than previous seasons. Even if Philadelphia ended up with, say, 90, 92 points and missed the playoffs this year, I think Flyer fans would take that. But let me know if you're a Flyer fan watching this, would you take a 90-point season and say, you know what, that's great, that's perfect? Or would you rather see them in that rebuild and adding more and more young prospects and maybe trying their lot at the lottery again and see if they can get that number 1 draft pick? Celebrini is the odds-on favorite to go first overall. He's not seen as a world beater by any stretch. I don't think there's any teams that are going to tank for Celebrini. But do you feel like Philadelphia needs a prospect more or a playoff appearance more? They haven't had a playoff appearance since 2020, and so it's been a little while. Be 4 years this spring. Do you want to see they're in the playoffs and having a chance, or would you rather see them go through the retool rebuild here? So Danny Briere said before the season started, hey, we're not tanking, and so far they're not. But let me know your thoughts Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.